Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video with Swaggle. And in this video, we have to talk about how history always repeats itself, because here we go again. We're going all the way back to the beginning of Phase 4 when Disney Plus had just come out. We got WandaVision and everybody lost their minds for the very, very infamous West Coast Avengers number 45, first appearance of White Vision. Here we are, kind of at the end of 2022. You know, we're at this point where comic books are going to $0 and the market doesn't seem to care because they are going nuts on West Coast Avengers number 45 once again, because we are getting a Vision series coming back on Disney Plus. So in this video, we're going to talk about the news. We're going to take a little bit of a look at some of the books moving in the market. And then I kind of want to, have this discussion around, sort of these split appearance characters, and also talk about, some of these, I call them like the B tier Avenger tiers, and ask the question, are these books, viable for the long term? But before I get into the video, if you guys could drop me a like or a comment or subscribe if you're enjoying the content, helps support the channel, doing all those things, I would appreciate it. But let's get into this video here. All right, so the news, as you guys I'm sure have already heard about, this is a couple days old. I wasn't able to report on it because I was enjoying my Halloween break. I hope you guys all had a great Halloween for yourselves. But here on Deadline, and of course, anytime there's a publication like Deadline that comes out with news like this, that this is, a legitimate source. Deadline doesn't kind of go into the rumor mill. This is, all credible news announcements that they do. And here you have the title, Vision series starring Paul Bettany in the works at Marvel Studios for Disney Plus. We don't totally need to go into what, all the details are. Apparently, the working title right now is Vision Quest. Vision Quest was actually, I think, one of the storylines in the West Coast Avengers run. And like most things with the MCU adapting comic book storylines, I'm sure it'll be kind of adaptation in name only, not necessarily, showing the actual story that we got. But with this news, as you would expect, we saw a huge movement of activity for West Coast Avengers number 45. I don't need to count it for you guys, but let us just scroll here. I mean, needless to say, this book right here is going to be on the top of, cover price. It's going to be on the top of, Key Collector. It's going to be on the top of Go Collect. Basically ever since we got this news, we have, over 100 copies sold, raw copies, a lot of raw copies, a lot of 9.6s and 9.4s. And this is also something that I think is really interesting to kind of, theorize around, where, we saw a flurry of sales at the 9.6 grade. And I think there's two sort of takeaways you can kind of have from this. I mean, I have to go to like the second page. There's two takeaways I have about this. All right, so it stops right here. But visually, just to show you guys, we had to go through two sold listing pages for this particular book. And to put it in perspective, before we got this announcement, on a regular day, you would maybe see 2 books sell at any given time, maybe 3 on a good day. So clearly this book is, desired in the market right now. And yeah, going back to that kind of 9.6 thing, I mean, we saw a lot of 9.6 sales. And, what's interesting about that is I sort of have this theory. I mean, tell me what you guys think about this. Like, we could be seeing multiple things happening here. Number one, the 9.6 book, the value of it typically is now selling between that, say, 110 to maybe upwards of 150 as far as a value range. And I do often think to myself that maybe that price point is a number that people can feel comfortable FOMOing into. If you have to pick up a 9.8 right now, there's actually only been one sale coming off this news. So nobody's really FOMOed into the 9.8. It could be that, all the list prices for that book are, way above what they should be. But there was one sale around I think the $350 range. And perhaps that's like kind of, what the cutoff point is for a lot of people with this kind of MCU spec FOMO. Maybe they're willing to spend $100. Maybe they see the 9.6 and they think to themselves, yeah, I'll take a risk on a book like that. Or are people thinking, hey, 9.6, What's the difference? Same thing as a 9.8. Maybe I can crack this thing, CPR it, and send it back in and get that 9.8 grade. And maybe that's going to be the game in which people are trying to make the money. But it's really interesting. We saw tons of raw copies sell. We saw a ton of 9.6s sell, and not too many 9.8s overall, which is definitely not what I would have expected coming off of this news. Just to nail the point home, I want to show you guys visually the amount of 9.6s that came off of the heels of this announcement. I mean, look at this right here. I mean, so this is the 9.6 grade. Currently, the 90-day moving is 115 for this, but you can see October 30 through October 29 through October 28. I mean, you saw quite a lot of sales for the 9.6 right here. Whereas like before this, you know, on a regular day in October 27, you'd see one, here's like two on the 22nd, and then here's a couple on the 16th. This is definitely a book that also did, you know, visually go up in price. You can see right here before the announcement, you know, we're talking 2 digits for the cost of this thing. And then after the announcement, we're definitely well into the, you know, mid 100s, 140, 150, 150. And we even got a $264 sale right here. Maybe that's a newsstand. I don't know if GPA breaks it out like that. Whereas if we look at the 9.8 grades, we did get one sale at the $345 price point, but that sale was basically right in line to where this book had been selling previously before this announcement at $350 and $349 right there, and we haven't had any sales after that. So it is really interesting to think about how the 9.6s have become such a target for the market. And again, it goes back to me with that theory of either people are thinking that this is just a book that they can resubmit and maybe get that 9.8, or people are thinking that, you know, hey, I only want a FOMO for $100 and I feel comfortable spending $100, and therefore I'm going to get the 9.6 grade. But it is really interesting. I mean, we're kind of back in this place of, you know, what we saw with White Vision all the way back when. And it does sort of beg the question, you know, if you're somebody out there who wants to spend, you know, a certain amount of money on this character, why wouldn't you be picking up Avengers 57, which, of course, if you guys know, is the first appearance of the Silver Age Vision, the original Vision. And I think, of course, it has a lot to do with, you know, that price point overall, which, of course, you know, if you guys know the prices of the Vision book off the top of your head, I mean, we're talking more than $100 or so, although there was quite a bit of activity for that book as well. Not as much, of course, for the White Vision book, because, you know, we're talking about a certain dollar amount, but you can see there were a handful of sales, definitely a lot more than there would have been in any other, say, week or so with this particular book, but, you know, a countable number. Maybe we're talking about 10 sales after the announcement actually came. And this is a book that, you know, for the most part had been correcting pretty hard, like a lot of books out there in the market. And I wouldn't necessarily say that, you know, this book is now selling coming off of this announcement for more than, you know, what it would have been. I do think that there were some decent sales for this thing, but nothing, you know, nothing crazy, not like tripling its money overnight. So for instance, here at the 6.0 grade, we saw on October 28th, this book sell for $450, not like a crazy amount higher than what it was going for before at $410, $409, $400, $380, but, you know, maybe a little bit of a boost because of the fact that people were excited for this announcement for this character. And this book in general to me is very, very interesting. I kind of think of West Coast Avengers and Avengers 57 similar in ways of how I think about Captain America 117 and also Captain America 25. Of course, 117 is the first appearance of Sam Wilson Falcon, and then 25 is the first appearance of Sam Wilson taking up the mantle of Captain America, and thinking about how the market has kind of a split interest in those respective books. But you do see a lot more movement for the cheaper books, of course, like Cap 25 moved a lot more in the market when we got the announcement that we were getting Captain America for the film, whereas Cap 117, I mean, you had a handful of sales, but not nearly as much. And this is kind of where I kind of want to talk and sort of end the video and just sort of pose it back to you guys and sort of have this discussion of like, you know, what book do you feel like is better to focus on? Let's say you are a fan of this character, you know, which one does the market want to own? Well, in my opinion, I mean, price aside, I do actually think that generally speaking, the market wants to own the book that is the one that is most accurately reflective of whatever they're seeing on screen. So if you're somebody out there who goes into Captain America 4, you probably want Captain America 25. I mean, biases aside, if you just, maybe if you're someone who doesn't like modern, you're not going to buy that book. But generally speaking, the comic book market as a whole probably wants the book that is most reflective of the one on the screen. But if we're talking about, long-term holding, if we're talking about, way down the line, I mean, we all know comic books always reset. There is always a return to normal, so to speak. And I do think that, whether it's 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, whatever the case may be, at some point we are going to be getting another Steve Rogers Captain America and a reset to, Falcon taking up his original red and white costume. Similarly with Vision, at some point they're going to tie up the storyline of him being White Vision. He's going to return to regular Vision. This might all be after Secret Wars when they reset the universe, but it is a return to form. And for that reason, when we're talking about protecting yourself in terms of the long term of owning some of these books, I do think that the originals are always going to be the safest bet, at least in terms of the long term. I mean, they may not move the most in the market. They may not be the most desired at the time in which the news announcements comes out. But I think it's pretty safe to assume that when we get more storylines with Visions in the future, after they do this sort of White Vision run, and even outside of the movie stuff, if we think about, whatever is going on in current comic books, there will always be a return to form of the original version of the character. But even on top of all that, last little thing I kind of want to talk about is, this idea of the Vision book, Avengers number 57, this first appearance of Vision. I think I want to do a video on this. Maybe I'll even do a whiteboard video on this. I hope you guys actually like my whiteboard videos. I have no idea. I mean, sometimes I think that they're hilarious, but also I think some people kind of just get lost when they hear me rambling. But one of the things I think is interesting about this book is I kind of feel like the Vision book is kind of a ladder theory book. If you guys happen to know the ladder theory, it's like a swing book. It's like the Kane of WWE. It's like the book that, puts other books over. And when this book gets hot, people use this one to swing into that next tier of grail that they want in their collection. And for that reason, this is a book that is always going to be fairly volatile in the market. I mean, you can see some of the graphs. Here's the 7.0, probably has one of the, most higher censuses for this thing. You can see constant ups and downs. This has not been a book that is slow and steady. This is a book that you see yo-yo up and down quite a bit in the market. I mean, for sure, like most things, generally speaking, over the long term, it is going up. But because the census is higher, this is a 1968 book, because I think people use this book a lot to, pay for their ability to get that next level of tier of character. This is that first appearance of a character who came out in 68, but, a lot of people want those first appearance of characters that came out in 62 and 63, like Incredible Hulk or Iron Man or Spider-Man, etc. So I think a lot of people use this book to leapfrog or to catapult themselves. And that's why you see a lot of volatility with it up and down overall, across all of the grades. So it is really interesting to talk about. I mean, that might be a whole other video. I might have to do, a discussion on that one as well. And I think Captain America 117, first appearance of Falcon, is kind of in a similar situation. I mean, I would say all the books that sort of came out in that particular time period have that volatility overall because of their census and because of the way that people view those characters in comparison to the original ones. Anyways, that's all for this video. That was me just kind of going over the market news. What do you guys think about, White Vision returning? How do you guys feel about this book? I mean, certainly we're in a much different space than where we were at the beginning of WandaVision. I mean, that book, there couldn't have been that high of a census for that particular book in terms of it being slabbed out there in the market. I mean, now one of the reasons why the prices have corrected so much is simply due to the fact that the supply has finally caught up. I mean, a lot of people clearly sent their books in to be graded, and maybe that's what people are thinking with the 9.6s. They're looking at that stuff. They're thinking they can crack and resubmit it and maybe get that 9.8. I don't know. It's really, really interesting. At the end of the day, I'm still excited to watch more stories with Vision. I think it was very clear that at some point we were going to be getting more stories with Vision. I mean, we literally finished with him flying up into the sky. I mean, that's just, Marvel would never finish the story just leaving a plot thread like that, just completely unsolved. So this was pretty, obvious or expected. And, the market definitely reacted, I guess, how you would have expected as well. Anyways, that's all for this video. Drop me a like, comment, subscribe if you're enjoying the content, and I will see you in the next one.